The whole family was cheering as Seal held her belly like a crown jewel. Everyone treated her like royalty, the miracle daughter finally expecting. I stood in the back, silent. No one noticed how pale I looked. No one asked why I hadn't been around for months, because they had already chosen who they wanted to celebrate. But the day I walked into that baby shower, holding 2 real babies in my arms, she dropped her fake belly and the whole room went silent. Lindiwe had always been the quiet one, the kind of woman who spoke gently, moved softly, and never demanded the room's attention. But her older sister, Seal, was the complete opposite. Loud, dramatic, and effortlessly charming. Seela could steal a spotlight even in a dark room. Their mother called her the shining star of the family. Their father often said, "That's just Seela, let her be," even when her actions hurt others. And Lindiwe, she learned early on to stay small, to avoid conflict, to keep her emotions buried deep, and to clap for her sister, even when her own hands were trembling. Growing up in Seela's shadow was like living behind a curtain. Lindiwe's achievements were always measured against Sila's noise. When she graduated, their mother said, "It's nice, but Sila had better grades." When she got her first job, her father nodded with half interest, until Sila mentioned she was starting a fashion page online. That's what the family gathered around to see. So Lindiwe got used to silence, not just the kind in rooms, but the kind that settles in your soul when you're constantly overlooked. Then, one year, everything changed. Both sisters got married, just months apart. Lindiwe married Kwame, a kind, supportive man who loved her for her quiet strength. Seela married Banele, a flashy entrepreneur with a love for attention, just like her. At first, there was peace between the sisters. Photos, congratulations, shared laughter. But that didn't last long. The pressure to be the first to give their parents a grandchild became real, and Seela took it as a personal mission. Every family dinner turned into subtle jabs. "We're just waiting on our miracle baby," Seela would say loudly, placing a dramatic hand on her stomach, even when she wasn't pregnant. "Some of us are just born to be mothers," she'd add, flashing a look in Lindiwe's direction. Their parents would laugh, not noticing how Lindiwe's face would tighten behind her smile. She had learned to hold her emotions still, but even steel bends with enough pressure. In the background, while no one was watching, something inside Lindiwe shifted. She wasn't jealous, not of attention, not of love, but she knew deep down the spotlight would eventually burn out. And when it did, the truth would shine all on its own. It was a quiet Sunday morning when the family WhatsApp group lit up with frantic messages. Seal had sent a voice note, her voice trembling with emotion, crying as she announced she had just taken a pregnancy test and it was positive. Her message was soaked in tears and excitement. "It finally happened, guys. I'm going to be a mum," she said. Almost instantly, the group exploded. Aunties were sending praise hands, uncles were calling her our miracle girl, and their mother's reply was a stream of crying emojis and prayers. Even their father, who rarely texted, typed, "God is good." But Lindiwe just sat there, staring at her phone screen. No one asked her anything. No one even mentioned her. She quietly typed a congratulations and hit send. That was it. But deep in her gut, something felt strange. It wasn't jealousy. It was something else. A tug, a hesitation, a question with no voice. In the weeks that followed, the family buzzed like a hive. Plans were already being made for a big baby shower. Seal soaked in every second of attention. She shared quotes about motherhood, posted photos of her first trimester cravings, and even joked about baby names online. But every time Lindiwe asked a simple question, like when her next doctor's appointment was, or if she had picked a hospital, Sale would laugh it off. "It's still early, babes," she'd say. "I'm just enjoying the moment." Lindiwe watched from the sideline. She noticed there were no scan pictures, no prescriptions, no vitamins on her kitchen counters when she visited. Seela always had a new excuse. The doctor's machine was broken, she was waiting for a new appointment, or the baby was too small to be seen on a scan. It was one story after another, but none of it made sense. Not to Lindiwe. She never confronted her. She just observed quietly, storing each strange detail like puzzle pieces in her heart. Because something about this pregnancy felt manufactured, forced, as if it wasn't about the baby at all, but about the applause that came with it. And Lindiwe, already walking through her own silent storm, knew that one day the truth would come knocking, and this lie wouldn't be able to hold the door shut. While Seela soaked in the spotlight like a celebrity, posting glowing photos and sharing baby name polls on her Instagram story, Lindaway was fighting a quiet war no one saw. Behind the scenes, her life was filled with needles, hospital corridors, and silent prayers. She and her husband, Kwame, had been trying to conceive for years. IVF had become a routine, hormone shots at dawn, long appointments with fertility specialists, and bruises that never showed on the skin, only deep in her spirit. Each cycle brought hope. Each one ended in pain. Twice she had conceived. Twice she had miscarried. The second time, she bled alone in the bathroom at 2 a.m., with Kwame holding her hand, whispering, "We'll try again, my love." But she was tired, not just physically, emotionally. It felt like her body betrayed her over and over. And still, she kept smiling at family dinners, nodding silently whenever someone mentioned how Seal was finally giving their mother something to live for. She never told anyone, not even her parents. She didn't have the energy to explain something they might not understand. Her mother always spoke in prayers and rebukes. You need more faith. Her father avoided emotional topics altogether. So Lindaway carried her pain alone, in silence, while watching her sister get showered with praise for a pregnancy that didn't even feel real. Sometimes, late at night, she would scroll through Seal's pictures, the bump that seemed to grow and shrink depending on the outfit, the captions about cravings and mood swings, the attention, endless, clapping attention. And there she was, Lindiwe, with nothing to show but hospital bills and empty rooms. She would stare at her phone, then lock it, pressing it to her chest like it could absorb the tears she refused to let fall. Kwame tried to be her rock, always reminding her of their love, their future, the bigger picture. But even rocks crack under pressure, and Lindiwe was starting to feel like the only person drowning in a family clapping for a performance. Still, she said nothing. She let Silas shine, let them cheer, because she knew real life doesn't need a stage, but truth, it always finds one. Lindiwe was folding baby clothes, not for herself but for a neighbour's newborn, when her phone rang. It was her mother. The voice on the other end was warm at first, asking if she'd seen Sela's new maternity shoot. Then came the sentence that sliced through her like glass. "Why can't you be more like your sister? She's glowing with life." Lindiwe froze. The call continued, but her ears went silent. Her heart wasn't just broken, it was emptied. Everything she'd been holding back, the pain, the loneliness, the invisible fight, suddenly felt pointless. They didn't know her truth, and maybe they never wanted to. After hanging up, she sat on the floor for what felt like hours. Then, with slow hands, she opened her social media apps and began deleting everything. Every picture, every memory, every trace of herself that had tried to stay visible. She no longer wanted to be seen by people who never truly looked. She turned off her phone, closed the curtains, and didn't leave the house for 3 days. Kwame noticed the shift immediately. He didn't ask questions, just held her at night and whispered, "You don't owe anyone anything. You're already enough." But even his words couldn't reach the place that had been bruised by her own mother's voice. Lindiwe stopped calling home. She skipped family dinners. She ignored messages from cousins asking if she was okay. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where she didn't have to chase love or earn it. She would create it, somewhere far from comparison, far from judgment. But just when she began to sink fully into this new silence, life nudged her gently. A few weeks later, she noticed something strange. She was waking up nauseous. Her body felt different. At first, she brushed it off, but the signs kept coming. So quietly, without a word to anyone, she took a test. 2 lines. She blinked, almost in disbelief, after years of heartbreak and disappointment, after all the forced smiles and sleepless nights. This time, it happened without effort, without noise, without an audience. In that quiet moment, Lindiwe smiled, not for the world, but for herself. Lindiwe had started sleeping better. She no longer woke up at 3 a.m. in tears or stared at the ceiling wondering if something was wrong with her body. The peace she had started building was soft, quiet, and healing. Then one morning, while brushing her teeth, she felt it, a sudden wave of nausea that had nothing to do with nerves, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. She didn't want to hope, but she took a test anyway, then another, and another. They all said the same thing, pregnant. Her heart pounded, but not from fear, from awe. She didn't scream. She didn't post. She simply sat on the bathroom floor, holding the test like a tiny miracle had just whispered her name. A week later, the doctor confirmed it. Not one, but 2 heartbeats. Twins, naturally, no IVF, no treatments. Just life happening when she least expected it. She didn't tell a soul, not even her mother. This time, she didn't want opinions, comparisons, or attention. She wanted to carry this gift in peace. She stopped checking family chats. She focused on her body, her prayers, her husband's warm hands on her growing belly at night. Kwame supported her choice to stay quiet, respecting every boundary she set. Together, they prepared in love and silence. Her bump grew steadily, beautifully, but no one knew. No baby bump photo shoots, no online countdowns, just whispered lullabies to her unborn twins under soft candlelight. And Lindawe, finally breathing without the weight of needing to prove anything. Then, near her 3rd trimester, the invitation came. A big, shiny card slipped under her door. You're invited to Seal's grandbaby shower. Huge venue, dress code, performances, family from all over flying in. Lindiwe stared at it for a long time. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to stay hidden, as she had for months. But something inside her shifted. A quiet voice whispered, maybe it's time they saw the truth, not through words, but through presence. She didn't reply to the invite. She didn't announce her attendance. But when the day came, she gently lifted her sleeping twins into their tiny carriers and walked out the door. The baby shower was extravagant. The hall was decorated like a royal event. Pastel balloons floating above every table, gold-printed banners that read, "Welcome baby," and an expensive cake shaped like a cradle. Family members from far and wide had gathered, all dressed to impress, laughing and sipping mocktails as music filled the air. The room buzzed with excitement, everyone waiting for the guest of honor, Seela. She made her entrance like a celebrity, nearly an hour late, slowly stepping into the hall in a fitted white dress that hugged her belly like a trophy. Phones came out immediately. Flashes went off. Everyone clapped. She placed her hand on her stomach dramatically, smiling like a queen who'd finally arrived to claim her crown. Then the doors opened again. No music, no announcement. Just Lindiwe, quietly stepping in, holding 2 infant carriers, one in each hand. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup, no shine. Yet somehow, in her silence, she stole every eye in the room. People turned, confused at first. Then one aunt pointed, another gasped. A cousin dropped her drink. In each carrier was a baby, tiny, peaceful and real. The crowd that had just cheered for Seela slowly shifted toward Lindiwe. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Whispers grew louder. Whose babies are those? Are they hers? When did she even get pregnant? No one had known. Not a single hint. No bump photos, no status updates, nothing. Sile's smile faltered. She looked frozen. Her hands dropped to her sides. Her bump suddenly looked more like padding. And under the soft lights of the hall, the illusion started to crack. Lindiwe said nothing. She didn't walk up to the stage. She didn't speak loudly. She simply stood near the back, rocking the carriers gently, as if all the noise and stares didn't matter. But the room had changed. The energy shifted. And for the first time, the spotlight found the one who never chased it, and left the one who always needed it standing in the shadows of her own lie. Sile's voice trembled as she tried to hold on to control. Wait, those aren't yours. That's not even possible, she stammered, her eyes darting between the babies and the stunned faces now turning towards her. Her confident posture began to fold in on itself. Her hands nervously touched the edges of her white dress, as if adjusting it might hold the room together. Lindiwe didn't speak. She didn't argue. She simply bent down and gently opened the flaps of the 2 carriers. Inside, swaddled in soft blankets, were a baby boy and a baby girl, both sleeping peacefully, the kind of peace that couldn't be faked, their tiny chests rising and falling, their soft fingers twitching in dreams. The room inhaled sharply. It was all real. Lindiwe's babies were real. People began to whisper. One aunt clutched her chest. Another shook her head in disbelief. A cousin leaned toward her friend and muttered, "But Seela never even showed us a scan." The atmosphere turned heavy. The music, once cheerful, now felt misplaced. Seela's face turned pale. She tried to laugh it off. You all are being ridiculous. I just haven't shared my scan yet. It's personal. But her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. And then, as if on cue, a little child running by accidentally brushed against her. In that split second, the edge of her tight dress tugged, and something shifted. The bump. It slipped. It deflated slightly on one side. Gasps echoed. Hands flew over mouths. No one said a word, but everyone knew. The truth didn't need a microphone. It didn't need yelling. It didn't need a fight. It stood there, in silence, in the form of two sleeping infants. Seela reached to hold her belly, to straighten it, to fix what had already broken, but it was too late. The illusion had crumbled. Her once admiring audience now looked at her not with pride, but with quiet disbelief. And Lindiwe, she didn't gloat, she didn't smile. She just stood by her babies, the real miracles, holding on to nothing but truth, because some stories don't need drama. They just need to be lived. Seely's face flushed with panic. Her hands trembled as she backed away from the staring crowd. "It's too early," she blurted out. "Too early to show the scans. I was just being careful." Her voice cracked as she tried to mask her fear with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But no one was convinced anymore. The room had already turned cold. Whispers filled the air, tension building with every second. Then, out of nowhere, a little boy, no older than 5, ran across the hall. He tripped on a balloon ribbon and reached out to catch himself. His tiny hand grabbed the edge of Seal's dress, and just like that, everything fell apart. Her fake bump, the carefully padded belly, slid down beneath the fabric, then fell out completely onto the glossy white floor. A cushion, exposed, visible, undeniable. Gasps rippled like waves. Mouths opened in disbelief. Plates clattered to the ground. Someone screamed. Seal froze, her eyes wide, her body locked in place. She didn't move to pick it up. She just stood there, exposed, stripped of her performance. Their mother clutched her chest and collapsed backward into a chair, fainting. A cousin screamed her name, rushing to help her. Their father didn't even blink. His eyes were locked on Lindiwe, as if seeing her clearly for the first time in years. He looked between the babies, and then the fake bump on the floor. Slowly, the shame rose in his face, not at Seal, but at himself, for believing a lie, for ignoring the quiet truth. Seal tried to speak, but no words came. Her lips moved, but no sound followed. Her audience had disappeared. The applause was gone. The spotlight had vanished. All that remained was the weight of silence, and a truth she could no longer run from. And Lindiwe, she stood still, her hand gently rocking one of the carriers. No tears, no smirk, just peace. In that moment, no one had to say a thing. The truth had already spoken, loud enough for everyone to hear. Lindiwe looked around the room, at all the stunned faces still frozen in silence. The fake bump sat on the floor like a fallen crown, and Sile stood beside it, shaking, eyes wide with humiliation. For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Then Lindiwe stepped forward slowly, her voice calm but clear enough for everyone to hear. "I didn't come here to shame her," she said, gently resting her hand on one of the baby carriers. "I came because I wanted my children to know their family." Every word carried a weight. Not anger, not revenge, just truth. She turned her gaze to her sister, who could barely look back. "You didn't need to fake life to be loved, Seela," she said softly, "but you chose a lie, and now it's yours to carry." Seela opened her mouth, but no words came. Her pride had no more shield. The performance was over, and the applause had stopped long ago. Lindiwe's voice didn't rise. She didn't gloat. She didn't rub salt in the wound. She simply looked at her family, many still frozen in shame and shock. Their mother sat quietly, her head bowed, hands wringing in her lap. Their father stood stiffly, staring into the distance, unable to face either daughter. "I carried pain in silence while you clapped for noise," Lindiwe said, not bitter, just honest. "But I won't let that define me. My children deserve to know love, even if it comes with silence." Then, without another word, she picked up the baby carriers, one in each hand. Heads turned as she walked toward the door. No one stopped her. No one dared. And just before she stepped out, she paused, turned slightly, and looked back one last time. "No more lies," she said simply. not around them, and then she left, quietly, gracefully, carrying not just her babies, but her dignity, her truth, and a power that needed no performance to be seen. In a room once filled with celebration for a lie, she became the only truth anyone could remember. Months had passed since that unforgettable day. The drama, the whispers, the shame, it all faded like a bad dream. Seal had vanished from social media completely. No more selfies, no more fake updates. Word quietly spread that she'd moved to another town, away from curious eyes and quiet judgment. No one said much about her anymore. It was as if the spotlight she craved had finally turned off. But Lindyway, her life had finally begun to bloom. She woke up each morning to soft giggles and little hands reaching out. Her home was peaceful, filled with warmth, not noise. She didn't post pictures, she didn't make announcements, but somehow, everyone saw her now, really saw her. Not because she shouted, but because her truth spoke louder than anything ever could. The same family that once ignored her now visited often, helping with diapers, rocking chairs, and warm pots of food. They didn't come out of guilt, they came out of respect. They understood what they had missed, and slowly, they tried to make it right. One afternoon, as the sun poured through the living room window, Lindy's mother came by. She picked up one of the twins and cradled the baby gently in her arms. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Forgive me. I was clapping for noise and ignoring the miracle in silence." Lindy looked at her mother, not with anger, but with the calm of someone who no longer needed anyone's permission to feel whole. She simply nodded. Some wounds don't need words, just time. Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep, she tucked them in slowly. One kissed her thumb in his sleep, the other sighed and curled into her chest. She leaned down and whispered, her voice soft as a prayer. "We never had to be loud," she said. "We just had to be real. No applause, no audience, just love. The kind that doesn't need to be seen to be powerful." And that night, the real crown, the one never chased, never faked, quietly found its place on the head of a woman who chose truth over noise.